Welcome to the WagerTalk Podcast for the week ending October 15th. We've got a big show tonight as we've got William Bernanke from CG Analytics. He's going to join us, and he's going to take us behind the counter and tell us where the money is going in college and NFL action. We have another segment of Handicapper's Corner. Interesting this week with Handicapper's Corner. We're going to talk about the NFL bye week. Is it buy or sell on those teams coming in and out of the bye weeks? I'm in studio this week with Ralph Michaels. Dave Cokin's got the week off. We've got Mark Seidel behind the controls making us sound good. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo. So let's get the party started and welcome in tonight's first guest. William Bernanke, he is the manager at CG Analytics. You can follow William on Twitter at the Moneyline Guy. William, good to have you on the show. Love having you on all year from time to time because our listeners love to go behind the counter, take a little peek over your shoulder and see what's happening and find out what's happening this week. But they also like to know what happened last week. And it was a big week here in Las Vegas. We had a big fight in town. And give us a quick recap of how it went for the books last week. And the first question I got to ask was Conor McGregor getting his ass kicked. How'd that work out for the books?
Oh, it couldn't have worked out any better, Marco. You know, him losing was the best decision. Really, any way he would have lost. The ticket count was 2-1 in his favor, so it was like a six-figure decision for us.
That's great stuff. Moving over to college, Ralph, take it.
You know what? Looking at the college game, tell us about how the overall weekend went. And I always love to hear not only what the biggest decision was for the books, but what the biggest volume game was.
Oh, yeah. The last week was solid, if not spectacular, as far as college football. And believe it or not, the biggest handle game ended up being LSU Florida. Not too surprising, but there were some other decent games on the board as well. And Florida winning outright was huge for us. And the late game, Utah, beating Stanford rather handily was a big win for us. Also, the second half wagers, we took that money as well.
Moving over to the NFL, William, we'll ask the same question. How did the week go for you? A lot of upsets last week, so I have a feeling you guys were smiling Monday morning. What was the net result for you guys, win or loss, and what was the key game that decided the weekend for you guys? Yeah,
it was a really good week in the NFL. Also, Cleveland winning outright, as ugly as that was, and as hard as to watch that was. That was a great result. Buffalo winning at the gun, and Minnesota. That's surprising how things change. The fact that the Bettors were not on Minnesota and them getting home as well was huge for us. And then going into the Sunday night game, which Houston winning wasn't such a great result, but you take what you can get, and then those three were huge.
William, I was on with Dave Cokin on the Las Vegas Sports Line earlier with Jason Simbal, and he said this week's college football card, there was a unique situation where Colorado +7 against USC. The dog was actually the public play. Tell us about any unique situations this week, and what are the three most popular games in college football as far as the volume's concerned?
Yeah, we were talking about that here with finish the point with Colorado. It's rare you see a ranked against unranked team getting a full touchdown or more. That's such a unique situation. It's I'd have to look back and when the last time that was. But there's three games I have my eye on here as far as where some money's going and some respected money as well. Georgia LSU opened at 7. It's at 7.5 now. And Georgia received some respected money at -7. A low four-figure bet there on Georgia. The other game was a lot. This is always want to give you whatever we have. And La Tech UTSA, Texas San Antonio, of all games, is seeing some action. Some respected money came in on Texas San Antonio at 13.5 and also at +12. And then, of course, the Michigan-Wisconsin game. I'm sure everyone's talking about that line move. Went up. It's up to 9.5 now. Respected money on Michigan -8 and -8.5. All these with the limits being somewhat low early in the week. These are all low to mid four-figure bets.
You know what? One game we didn't tell you we're going to talk about, but just off the top of your head, I am just amazed at the incredible line movement in the Nebraska-Northwestern game. Can you give us some insight in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's coming back now. It's up to 4.5. I saw the money line come back also with Northwestern. There's nothing really fishy here. It's just the bettors are buying Nebraska, and the reason why is because of their ability to move the ball the last couple of weeks. Obviously the results haven't been there, but they're moving the ball so well, actually as well really as any team in the Big Ten right now, yardage-wise. So bettors are finding that value with a team moving the ball against Northwestern team. Let's be honest, up until recently, they weren't really moving the ball up until the last couple games, at least the way we figured going into the season. So bettors are buying into that, but I think that was all that was, and we're seeing some buyback on Northwestern at the non-value numbers with Nebraska here.
Yeah, that's having a healthy Adrian Martinez for 2 weeks in a row now for Nebraska. Yeah. This kid's he's really talented, and he's grasping the Scott Frost system. So they're going to put up some points. The question is, can the Nebraska defense stop anybody? That's something they haven't done all year. Big question, yeah. So far, it's hard to have any faith in their defense. So we'll see what happens and certainly get a better feel. This is kind of a tough team to price this whole year in Nebraska. They've been all over the place, and maybe we'll get a better read after this week. Yeah,
and Northwestern had a very misleading win as well. I mean, they won that game, but they were outgained significantly. So, again, like you said, the Sharps pay attention to those type advantages the following week. Will, heading to the NFL this week, what is the games that are getting the early money from the Sharps? We know that John Q. Public generally doesn't get involved in the NFL till after they see how their college wagers went, and they're there on Sunday morning. So the money you're seeing now is generally respected money. Where's it going? Okay, well, we'll start off with the Steelers-Cincinnati game. Cincinnati opened up 2.5. It's a 2.5-point favorite. They're currently -2, and we took a respected bet on Pittsburgh at +2.5. A four-figure bet there, mid-four-figure. So we're seeing a little action there. The Houston Texans got a big bet today on Houston. It was mid-afternoon, and it was a low five-figure bet on Houston, knocking them up from, it opened at -7 and taken off the board. So we got it at -10 when Watson obviously is officially the starter. It's up to 10.5 now. And the Patriots, we got a low five-figure bet on them at -3. So they were -3, -125, little juice there. Jason, Jason, Will, my next question is, since I talked to Jason today, I know the answer to this, and, we have two championship series, the AL and the NL series, where the road team is actually a favorite, and a favorite much more significantly than I thought they would. Tell our listeners about how big the LA Dodgers and Houston Astros have become a favorite in the series. Yeah, it's certainly a unique situation here. Dodgers are actually now up to 170. They opened up $1.45, and it's all Dodger money so far in the series, which, again, I'm a little surprised as well with that. Milwaukee, playing as well as they have, their bullpen, all the factors. And that certainly liability is with the Dodgers right now, and that correlates with the line move. Houston opened up $1.15. They're up to $1.37, a very deserving favorite, the defending champions. Boston off the big win against their arch rival, the Yankees, to my dismay, of course. But got to keep it professional here. And Houston is a liability as well there in this series. But I expect to see Boston buyback, probably more so than maybe Milwaukee buyback because of the large market and the big following they have. Will, as I said, our listeners love to hear this kind of stuff of where the sharp money's at and everything. And we know that it gets hectic on Sunday mornings. That's when the public gets involved, and people like to fade the public, and hear ticket counts and things like that. And you started doing a new segment with our own WagerTalk's Kelly Stewart, Kelly in Vegas, every Sunday morning. It's called the 2-Minute Warning. You guys do this about 60 to 90 minutes before the first kickoff, and Kelly sits you down and asks you, and generally you're right there in the office, right in the line of fire, and tell the listeners what happens right up at that moment, gives a live update.
Explain what you're doing and how valuable this information is to the viewers.
Oh, yeah, I think it's great. It was certainly a great idea. She'll pick a few NFL matchups that either she's noticed or really anybody would notice, significant line moves and games she feels have high handle. And we'll just do a quick rundown of where the action is and if any respective money's coming in. And it gives everybody a great look at the market when the liabilities are really shaping up. You know, you really see the true cold, hard cash come in Sunday morning, and to be able to share that with everybody is really a great thing.
It's, we love to hear the Joes versus pros, and I know me personally, whenever I've already got my wagers down, but when I check out that video and I find out that I'm on the side that the house needs, I feel a lot better.
Yeah, that's great. Certainly works out that way. It seems like you get, every little break seems to help you.
Yeah, you guys, I like riding with you guys. I haven't seen I've yet to see a book shut down because they got beat up by sports bettors.
Casinos don't lose money very often, do they?
No, they don't. They don't. That's why they got all those fancy lights on the strip, guys. Somebody has to pay for that. Hey, Will, we love having you on board. We'll have you back on the show real soon. Tell us what's happening with CG. Anything going on?
Yeah, it's definitely a great time of the year to, if you don't have an account already, to go down to a CG book, open up an account, put it, make a deposit. First, you got to download the account, so you can do all that in one day, probably even an hour, hour and a half. And that's where you can bet the games where you watch the games, so you don't have to wait in any lines. And certainly you can bet close to the kickoff, so you can get the number that you want as well.
Or you could be like Marco and just sleep in on Sunday, be in your bed, and bet the game from there instead of getting your ass out of bed. So
betting from bed, the killer bees. That's the best way to go.
There's nothing better than placing a winning bet in your underwear. I'll tell you, that's the best in the world, guys. And you know what? Well, obviously, unless they're living under a rock, everybody knows about the app. But there's so many people that come to town just for the weekend. We get those weekend warriors from California, Arizona all the time, and people here on vacation, and they don't think that they can use the app. And it's not being a Nevada resident, it's just being in the state of Nevada. So while you're here, download the app. Once you download the app and open an account, you put the money in. It's takes no more time than making one bet at the counter. You get the money in there, then you make your wagers all weekend long. Before you leave, you just go and pull your money out, and then next time you're back in town, just redeposit money and play that way. And it's the best way to do it because you don't have to fight the traffic at the sports book. If you've ever, and that's why I love, wagering at home on the app. In the old days when you had to run down to the strip, and that last hour before the first games kick off at 10 a.m., it is insane in the sports books. The lines are there, and, you don't have to worry about that. And if you're betting in-game, that's the only way to do it. Have the app and jump on those in-game wagers. Check it out at CG, any of the properties, and my personal favorites, I have two of them, one on each side of the strip. If I'm on the one side of the strip, I go to the Venetian. If I'm on the other side of the strip, I go to the Cosmo. Two of the just absolutely phenomenal properties on the strip for CG Technologies. Guys, we'll have you back soon. Appreciate you stopping by. That's going to wrap up our first segment. When we come back, Ralph and I is going to head to the Handicapper's Corner. We're talking NFL bye weeks. Does it make you money? We'll tell you how it can. Up next here on the WagerTalk Podcast.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. We're going to head into Handicapper's Corner. This week we're going to do something a little different as the bye weeks have begun in the NFL. And this is a unique handicap because you've got a couple teams each week that had last week off. Is it a benefit? Is it a negative? Is it a momentum stopper? Well, we're going to dig into some of the numbers. And when we talk numbers, we use my man, Ralph Michaels. I sent you the question. I said, Ralph, dig me up all the information you can regarding bye weeks, and you got some interesting stuff. We had this will be the third week of byes so far. This week we've got Tampa Bay and Chicago coming off of their bye week. Of course, the Lions and the Saints are on their bye week this week. Ralph, what have we seen with bye weeks, early season, late season? Give us some numbers.
Well, we're going to talk about early season, late season, before a bye and after bye, and not specifically what the teams have done, but what teams have done in a certain situation, meaning a home favorite or a home dog. And Marco, when you brought this question to my attention, and I've talked to two people, just handicappers, since you asked me the question, both were surprised with the results, and I would say at least 9 out of 10 would get this question wrong. Is it better for an NFL team, statistically or ATS-wise, to have a bye early in the year, the first 8 weeks, or from week 9 or later? When I told you the answer, you were surprised, as I was. Teams that have a bye week later in the year when you would think they would need it more have only gone 46-43. That's a 46% ATS mark week 9 or later. Those teams that have had a bye early in the year where you don't think they would need them, again, there's a lot of situations or subsets within this, but just playing blindly, the teams off a bye the first 8 weeks of the season, 27, 20, and 1, a 57% ATS clip.
Well, we all know that that magical number we need is 52.38% to turn a profit. So that is a sizable profit on, a small sample size. We did it. You took that back to, 2014?
2014, and I did that because, we've seen a change in offensive schemes and the way teams play. And, yes, I could have gone back to 2000, but, we have such a different building of teams of late that I felt it was the fair market size for comparing those 5 years relative to this season.
Now, Ralph, you sent me the numbers after you ran all this, and there are some very intriguing situations. Most importantly, home favorites before their bye week, 42-6 straight up. That's just an incredible number. Now, of course, we all know that we're not here to talk about straight ups. We want to know about against the spread. Well, that converted to 32, 15, and 1 against the spread. That's a 68% category.
Yeah, that's something you want to look at. Obviously, you're a home favorite, so you're the better team. You know you can give all-out effort because you have the next week off. That was the New Orleans Saints last week. They won and covered. And that's actually Green Bay this Sunday night. And for those that
Monday
night.
Monday night,
yeah. For those that want to know, there's 3 or 4 more possible situations occurring this year. Just follow me at Cal Sports LV. Look back at my tweets today. I listed all the games that it occurred with and all the potential games coming on for the rest of the year. Again, there's at least 3, maybe 4, depending on how one of the lines break out, where you can use that 32 and 15 and 1, 68% record.
Now, if you're thinking that is a stat that's to the home team, it's not, because if you take that same angle and make it a home dog, you're losing 12. You're 12 and 15 straight up. You're 15 and 12 against the spread. So you are turning a profit there. But where an interesting number is an away favorite before the bye, 16 and 4 straight up, converted to 11, 8, and 1 against the spread. So another winning situation of 58%. But, Ralph, there's one area that was just horrid before a bye, and tell us which one that is.
And, again, those other 3 records aren't as good as the home favorite, but obviously if you're at home before a bye, it's a benefit. If you're an away favorite before the bye, it's a positive record because you're the better team on the road knowing you're going to get rest. But if you're the away dog the week before a bye, you're 8 and 27 straight up, and you are 13, 21 and 1, only a 38% ATS record. Those are away dogs the week before a bye.
What I get from this, Ralph, is as far as before the bye goes, looking at the favored is definitely the play away or you're home or away.
Yeah, if you're at home or you're the better team, it benefits you off a bye. You have the advantage
before the bye
because you know you're going to have that week off and you want to go into that week with a winning note.
Now, something that I didn't ask you to do, but this is something that obviously if it's a winning angle as it is, this would increase it. If you tease those teams, you're gonna make those records even better because the straight up records are phenomenal on both angles. So if you take that extra 6 or 7 points to your favor, that's going to really make this a high percentage play.
Marco, what I'll do is again just follow me at CalSportsLV. I will tweet those records out tomorrow with those scenarios for those same 4 situations, how they do ATS, which you already know, and how they do in a 6-point and 10-point teaser.
All right. And, Ralph, so obviously we talk about before the bye week. Well, there's the other scenario after the bye week, and you broke those down for us as well. Tell us what you found there that stood out to you in the after the bye week.
Well, I think the logical conclusion is this. If you're the home team before the bye and you're better off being the home team with a winning record, then after the bye, after you rested, you should benefit as well. Well, not only is that not true, it's significantly not true. If you look at being at home after a bye, and maybe we'll equate it to this. You're at home, you relaxed, you took care of your family business, you spent time with your wife and your kids, you get ready a couple days before the game, and all of a sudden you're ready to play. Well, you're not ready to play. Perhaps if you go on the road, it's more of a business trip and you prepare differently. But if you're the home favorite the week after a bye, yes, you've won most of the games going 37-18 straight up, but you're only 24, 29-2, 45%. And if you're a home dog the week after the bye, it is much worse. 4-16 straight up, only going 7, 12-1, 37% after a bye. So home teams after a bye, a favorite, 45%, a home dog after a bye, 37%.
My theory there, and when you look at numbers, and you always try to make sense of the numbers, you want to see if there's a reason logic-wise. For me, when we're talking about these favorites and talking about them being at home, and we see the records not, a profitable one, the first thing that comes to mind to me is if you're a favorite, that means you went into the bye, you were a good team going into the bye.
Are you going to bring up Fat and Sassy?
Well, you could bring up Fat and Sassy. What I was going to bring up is a momentum stopper, is everything was going good for you prior to the bye week. So now you went in and you took that break in the middle of the season with momentum, and now you got to come back. And especially when you're at home, you have that tendency to be more comfortable in your home surroundings, and you're laying an extra price because you are at home. That's where we see these teams, maybe they are doing okay straight up, but they're not doing it against the spread. So that one makes sense to me.
And again, even if it's not a significant number, 45% isn't a great number, but I'm sure if you read write-ups from other people around the NFL, how many times do you read, well, they're home and rested off a bye?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a normal write-up. Now we've exposed that isn't a positive, it's actually a negative.
That's a great point, Ralph, because there are so many things in football, all sports, that people just take it as, they heard it once somewhere or it sounded good, and it becomes gospel. It's urban legend. But, anytime I have something that goes through, my sick brain and I say, you know what, I want to check this out. What am I going to do? I call you and I run it by you. You run it through the database for me and bring it back, and then we got hard facts, and, and that's the thing. And, the beauty of it is, and guys, here's an opportunity for our listeners. If you ever have something that you think, hey, I wonder what teams are in this particular situation, tweet at Ralph or myself, and we'll cover it on one of the podcasts, or we'll just answer you on Twitter. That's something we make ourselves accessible for, and, I'm saying doing both of us. If you tweet me, I'm just going to turn around and tell Ralph, hey, Ralph, look us up for me, buddy, but unless it's something I already know. And go ahead with there's another situation we talked about at home. What about the teams after the bye, Ralph? On the road, we got favorites and dogs in those situations.
Well, It's the away favorite role now that's the most profitable in this situation. Teams that come off the bye and now they're an away favorite. I'm guessing they're very businesslike during the week. They know they're going on the road. When you're at home, your structure, those 48 or 72 hours, isn't the same. But when you're traveling, you know you have to pack your bags, you have to be at the airport this time, you're going to hotel, you're going to have the team meal. All that is very structured. Well, away favorites after the bye, 17-8 straight up, 15-10, 60%. Again, we're not talking about magical 80 or 90% numbers, but if you get enough 60% at 40% situations, and you learn to whittle down your plays into those positive rolls, it's going to increase your bankroll. And an away dog, just over the Mendoza line. Teams that are an away dog after a bye, while they're 14-22 straight up, they're 19-7, 53%. So again, you're not going to base a play on that, but you know that if you like a situation, you don't have to say, they're coming off a bye, but they're traveling. Is that a negative? Well, no. It should be no effect in your database with a 53% ATS mark.
Yeah, I'll bet that away dog, when you run the teaser numbers, that's going to improve drastically, the away dog, adding that extra 6 or 7 points on them in the teaser. Ralph, as always, great stuff with the numbers. And, we got away a couple weeks there with the Handicapper's Corner, not, actually talking about some handicapping theories. We were breaking games down, and we'll mix it up all throughout the season. But this is something that I like to do, Ralph, because, you can break down one game, you can give somebody a winner on that game, but if you can teach people things in handicapping that they can use moving forward, it goes back to the old saying, you can teach somebody to fish, or, and he can, fish for himself, or you can give him a fish dinner, however that saying goes. You know what I'm trying to say.
And again, it's so much different in the NFL than college. College, from top to bottom, you may have a 55-point spread between the best and the worst team, especially the way Alabama's playing. Yeah. In the NFL, it's usually between 14 and 17. We saw the best Minnesota against the worst Buffalo, and how did that work out?
Yeah.
So in the NFL, the bye situations are so much more pertinent because the teams are so close to each other as far as the strength of their power rating numbers. So again, perhaps we'll do something with college. I don't expect the results will be much more varied, but we can look at that in a future week.
Absolutely. All right, great stuff. We're going to step out for a quick break. When we come back, it is going to be our college football previews. We got some good games this weekend that we're going to cover. We'll be back in a moment here on the WagerTalk Podcast.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. We're going to head into our college football previews, but before we do, this segment is sponsored by uwager.eu. Get a 70% welcome bonus of up to $1,000 when you use promo code WT70 when signing up. This is an exclusive offer for our WagerTalk Podcast listeners. You can open an account and get a 70% sign-up bonus up to $1,000. Once again, that promo code WT70. All right, Ralph, it is college football time. We've got 4 big games that we're going to go over, and let's start, Ralph, with the first one in the SEC. We got Georgia. They're traveling to LSU. First thing I'm going to ask you, Ralph, are we just wasting our time? Because everybody that I've talked to is already – the regular season is just a prelude to getting to the SEC Conference Championship game that's going to be Alabama and Georgia. Both teams be undefeated at that point. One of them is going to have one loss, and then we're going to have to find out if that one-loss team finds their way into the Final Four.
That one-loss team will be in. If it's Georgia and Alabama undefeated and they're playing each other in the SEC championship, they'll be playing each other again in a few more weeks in the 1-4 round.
Yeah, but will they do that? Yes.
If they're both undefeated, if the SEC has a one-loss team and the only loss Georgia has is to Alabama, there's no question they're in.
But to turn them around and play them, because it would have to be 1-4 in that scenario. They would have to play right back, and that wouldn't be fun for the fans. But hey, we'll see what happens, and that means somebody along the line is going to get the shaft.
Yeah, well, maybe Alabama loses. Saban loses the game on purpose to fire up his team. To say, hey, we just lost to Georgia. They're better than we are. Let's go out and kick their butts in the playoffs.
No, that's not happening. All right, let's get to this one. Georgia, -7.5 on the road at LSU. Does LSU have a shot here? Now, I know we've been all over the place with LSU this year. At the beginning of the season, we didn't think they were as strong as they were. Then they have the big Auburn win, that opening night win. Would they play Miami the opening week? Destroyed them. So then all of a sudden we're putting all of this stock into this team as being as good as they are. And then last week they go to Florida and they lose. Now the final score wasn't indicative. It wasn't an 8-point game. They had a pick six at the end of the game that made that final score look bigger than it was. Can they play with Georgia in this game?
Well, LSU played better than I thought at Florida. I was on the Florida side, and Florida won and covered. But LSU was -2 turnovers, and that was the difference in the game. The pick late in the game by Joey Burrow. But I just cannot wrap my head around this LSU team. Despite, a few years ago, if I said to you LSU is going to be a 7.5-point home dog, you would say, well, they're playing Alabama, and that's it. Maybe not even against Alabama. They weren't that dog when they were playing well. So the situation is very difficult. I look at, though, Joey Burrow is completing 54% of his passes. The offense is averaging 4.4 yards per carry. I don't think that gets it done against a Georgia team that's averaging 250 pass yards, 250 rush yards, averaging 6.5 yards per carry north of that, and averaging almost 70% completions. My only concern backing Georgia in this role is they haven't been tested. Yeah. They were home the last 2 weeks against Missouri, against Tennessee and Vanderbilt, and the only game they were tested on that they didn't cover was the Missouri game. They won by 14. Missouri got a backdoor touchdown. So going on the road, if something happens where they get behind early, then we'll see perhaps a different Georgia team. If Georgia gets an early lead, I think they just continue to run away with it.
Ralph, Georgia did catch one break in this game, and we talked about it in videos this week. This is at Death Valley, and everybody knows how tough it is to play at Death Valley, but they're playing in the daytime. This is the CBS SEC game of the week, so it's at 3:30. That's a big break for Georgia because it is a totally different environment if you go to Death Valley at night. In my opinion, I think you would agree with that.
I would, but again, you got to remember this Georgia team was in the playoffs last year, so when a team goes through that type of scrutiny the next year and they have the same base players, it's easier to go into that situation and handle it.
At the end of the day, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trust this LSU defense. They have played well. In their games this year, they have only allowed more than 21 points one time, and that was last week. And we said the 27 points misleading because they got a touchdown at the end of the game on a pick six. So the defense still only gave up 20 points last week to Florida. I'm going to have them keep them in this game. I look for them. This is the toughest defense that Georgia will have faced this year. I think Georgia escapes, Ralph, but I see this coming down to a field goal at the end of the game. I'm calling it Georgia 27-24. With that said, I got to grab this as over a touchdown, take the value with LSU. I think the stock dropped on them after the Florida game last week, and I think that we just have to really reevaluate this Florida team. I've underrated them all year myself personally. I don't know if you've made an adjustment on them. They're better than I thought they were.
And their loss to Kentucky earlier in the year
was a fluky loss.
And we saw how good Kentucky is. I mean, so they're a legitimate team. I do have Florida quite a bit, and I just think because I'm a Mullen fan, what Mullen did at Mississippi State as a head coach, I mean, just showed me that he can take players that aren't Alabama or Georgia caliber, but make them competitive. So I did have Florida up beginning this year because of Dan Mullen.
All right, let's move to the Big Ten, and this is a big one in the Big Ten. You got Wisconsin traveling to Michigan. You know what, Ralph? We looked at Michigan. They had that opening loss at Notre Dame, and we said, same old stuff with Michigan. They can't win a big game and this and that. They haven't done anything wrong since, and now looking back at the Notre Dame game and what Notre Dame has done since, that loss doesn't look that bad at all right now.
Well, Ian Book wasn't there for Notre Dame, so Notre Dame's actually a much better team as well as Notre Dame, as Michigan is. But, I look at this situation, and there's so much love for Michigan. We see it every year. People just love to bet on Michigan, and they love Harbaugh as the head coach. So, yes, we had a fall off that 1 week against Notre Dame after the Notre Dame game, but people continue to back this Michigan team. And this is a line that, to me, has just gotten too high. Wisconsin is the type of team that runs the ball. We know that. They're never going to change that Wisconsin team with Alvarez as the director there, the AD there. He's going to hire someone that plays Wisconsin football. And they run the game, and they've had their rush attack going. Two numbers on this game. Wisconsin has been 9-1 ATS against Michigan because they keep the game close and they cover as a dog. The second is, in Wisconsin's last 33 Big Ten road games, they have never lost a game by over 7 points. They can keep it within that number. That's what their rush attack and a solid defense does. And yes, Shea Patterson looked good, the Ole Miss transfer early in the year, putting up 49 against Western Michigan and 56 against Nebraska. But again, this is a different defense.
Well, it wouldn't be a game if me and you didn't disagree, Ralph. You'll look at this one, and I'm going to bring up two things here. One, I think Harbaugh finally has a quarterback. This has been the missing.
With that. I do agree.
The missing link for this Michigan team. They've always had a great defense. And talking about that great defense, now we got you've got the rushing attack. They're allowing just 2.6 yards per play on the ground. Tell me if they slow down this Wisconsin running attack, and Wisconsin's got to throw the ball. Do you really trust Hornbrook to get the job done against this Michigan defense if he's got to throw the ball?
Well, you have to look at who's Michigan's played. I mean, Maryland's not a running attack. Northwestern is the lowest rushing team in the Big Ten, averaging under. They're the only team averaging under 120 yards per carry. SMU is a passing team, and Western Michigan is a MAC team. So, to me, yes, the numbers are good, but again, you have to compare them to their quality of competition.
All right. Well, I'll play devil's advocate, and I'll go to the first week of the season. That was the most rushing yards they gave up. That was to Notre Dame. That is a rushing team. They got 132 yards, but it took 47 carries to get that 132 yards. Still a very poor per rush attempt average.
So, Marco, your play on this game?
I'm going with Michigan here. I think for the first time, Harbaugh actually does have the complete team. He's got a quarterback that's getting him good numbers. He's completed 68% of his passes, Ralph. He's thrown for just under 1,200 yards. He's got a 10-3 touchdown to interception ratio. That gives this team balance, and it makes the defense better because how many times was Michigan? They were going out there and having 3-and-outs because the quarterbacks couldn't sustain drives, and you put the defense right back out on the field. That's not the case anymore. The offense is staying on the field, which makes the defense even better than it is, and I don't know how you can say they can get any better. I think Wisconsin's in trouble if they can't run the football. This is a spot where now, last week, I throw out the Nebraska game, okay? They looked right past Nebraska. There's no reason to have gotten up for Nebraska. They were looking ahead to Michigan. But this is still a team that lost to BYU, and I know that the scoreboard says they beat Iowa. Iowa beat Iowa that day. It wasn't Wisconsin. Iowa shot them.
3 turnovers.
Yeah, they shot themselves in the foot. This is a spot where I like Michigan. I'll go ahead, lay the chalk with the Wolverines.
All right, Marco, we looked at an SEC game. We looked at a Big Ten game. And I think the next two best games in the football schedule this week are out west in the Pac-12. You know, we have Washington that lost to Auburn. That loss doesn't look too bad, although Auburn has struggled a little bit. And Oregon off that very misleading loss to Stanford. Now they meet Oregon, a rare home dog. Take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you what. Of all the games that we're breaking down, both college and pro this week, this one gave me the hardest time breaking it down, Ralph. But I had to put it on the list for us to talk about because it's one of the best games on the card for Saturday. I know the Pac-12 gets lost in the shuffle. A lot of their games are those Saturday night games at 10:30 Eastern time. A lot of people don't get to see these teams. But Oregon has been a mystery to me. I keep looking at them. They put up those big, gaudy numbers, and I just don't believe in them. And I'll be honest, I had Stanford in the game against Oregon. I was totally lucky. That is probably the luckiest win I will ever endure in college football. I guess that Sunday when I lost the Miami Dolphins is my best bet on the podcast last week. That evened out for the Stanford one because as bad as I had no right in the world to win the Stanford game against Oregon, I had no reason in the world to lose Miami against Cincinnati last week in the NFL. So the gambling gods, they balance things out. But you look at this one. Washington's a team that came into this season with all of the hype. They brought back almost this entire team, Ralph. You had Jake Browning, a 4-year quarterback. How often do you see that anymore in college football? But the one knock on Browning has always been he disappears in the big games. You don't see him lead his team. I want to see him one time carry this Washington team on his back. We haven't seen that. He's going to have to do that here against Oregon. This is a tough place to go into to play Oregon. You look at the gaudy numbers with Oregon. They hadn't played anybody, and that's why I went against them against Stanford. They handled Stanford mightily easily, and then they came back and against California, where you thought they might have been down and flat because, the supposed Dream Crusher game, because no team with one loss is going to make any noise as far as getting into the playoff picture.
Not west of the Mississippi.
No, it's not going to happen. So for Oregon, the only thing they can focus on is the Pac-12 championship. I lean to Washington, but this is my weakest vote of all the games this week. I'm interested to hear what you say. Is Oregon for real, or Washington coming in here? Can they get the job done in hostile environment?
You would think after 5 weeks you could answer that question if Oregon was real. Yes, they have the new head coach Mario Cristobal, and with Taggart leaving, but you look at what they've done. They had Bowling Green, Portland State, and San Jose State. San Jose State, they were flat, but the other teams they handled mightily. Then you have Stanford. Well, they should have won the game, and they didn't. They were -3 turnovers. Then you have Cal.
And the coach don't forget, the coach made a horrible mistake in that Oregon game where all they had to do was take a knee.
Right.
They had to take a knee, and they had the game won.
And he ran the ball to the left, and he fumbled.
Yeah.
So, and then you look at the Cal game. Well, the Cal game, they were only plus 58 yards, but they were plus 4 turnovers. So we still don't know what they would do in a competitive game. So we really don't have an idea. But, Mario Cristobal as a home dog is 6-0 ATS with a bye. That's a positive situation. Having 2 weeks to prep for a Washington team that is playing its second straight road game is a positive situation. So this game won't be on my card. And, again, it's my weakest as well, but I have a lean with the Ducks.
One other thing I'm going to put out, one of the reasons why we really don't know the true strength of this Oregon team, this is the middle of October, Ralph. They've only played one road game. One road game. I mean...
And they were plus 4 turnovers in that game.
Yeah.
So again, you don't know what happens when... You don't know how a team reacts on the road until you're down in that game or you're even at halftime and you make your adjustments and you go into the second half. Well, against Cal last week, it was 28-10 at the half, so they had those advantages.
Yep. All right, we got one more in college football. We're going to stay with the Pac-12. You've got Colorado and Southern Cal, and I got to tell you, when I looked at this game and wrote the number down, I had to go back and look at the screen a second time to make sure I didn't screw something up. Colorado's 5-0. Colorado cracks the top 25. They're ranked 19th in the country. They're playing a 3-2 USC team. They're a 7-point underdog in this game, and they're undefeated and ranked versus an unranked 3-2 team. That tells me Vegas is giving Colorado absolutely no credibility for what they've done thus far.
You know, we had William Bernanke earlier in the show from CG Technologies, and I was on with Dave Cokin for Las Vegas Sportsline talking to Jason Simbel, also from CG Technologies. He said this is one of the rare games where the public is on a dog. You normally don't have that situation where public's on a dog because of exactly what you said. Now, my answer to that is this. Colorado hasn't proven anything yet. They had a neutral game against Colorado State. They had a Nebraska game without Martinez. They were home against New Hampshire. They were home against the UCLA team, which we know has struggled in Chip Kelly's new offense. And they finally were home against a winning team against Arizona State. Well, they've only played one team in the top 70 in the country. That's Arizona State. Now you look at USC. They were home against UNLV. They didn't cover in the opener. They were on the road with a true freshman making his first road start. They lose that game. So then what happens? They go on the road back-to-back games with a true freshman making his second ever road start. Those are tough situations. I will mention this. USC is 18-0 straight up under Helton. They haven't been a good home favorite. In fact, they're 2-7 as a home favorite the last couple years. But with all that said, I don't trust USC as a home favorite because of that record. You still have that freshman quarterback. I like the way Montez is playing for Colorado, and I would have to back the Bucks.
Well, that freshman quarterback for USC is a situation where he's getting better by the week as he's growing.
As do all freshmen 6 games in. Yeah.
But I want to go back to you said about Martinez, wasn't in that game. Martinez was in that Colorado game. He got hurt during that game. When he was in there, they came back. They fell behind 14-0, and then Nebraska scored on I don't know how many possessions in a row. They were smoking this Colorado defense, and then he went out with the injury, and the game changed, and Colorado stole a win. And I know because I had Colorado in that game, and I said, well, I'm on the wrong side here, and then I got the break when Martinez went out.
You are correct. I did misspeak. Colorado actually trailed in that game 21-17 at halftime, and they ended outscoring Nebraska in the second half 16-7.
And that was after a 14-0 lead right out of the gate because Nebraska had a couple quick turnovers at the beginning.
Yeah, his first pass was a pick six, right?
Yeah, it was a freshman quarterback, making his first start
because the Akron game got canceled.
Exactly. Yep. So I'm going to go with USC here. To me, when I look at it's always been a thing. It doesn't matter if it's football, basketball, when the rankings say one thing, but Vegas is telling me something totally different, I'm going to always side with the guys that do this for money, okay? And that's the Vegas lines makers. The guys that do the rankings and the polls, they don't look at things as far as the betting standpoint.
To put it in perspective, Colorado is the AP number 19. In my power ratings, I still have them about number 45. Yeah. So, again, I understand that. They're clearly not as good as that, so you are getting some value because of that.
I'm taking USC laying the points. I got them winning 34-20. All right, Ralph, that wraps up our college section tonight. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to look at some NFL action. Got a couple games. Yeah, we got some good ones and we got some shaky ones, but that's what makes the NFL good because on any given Sunday, just ask the Buffalo Bills, somebody can win. I should say ask the Minnesota Vikings that question. We'll be back here in a moment on the WagerTalk Podcast. Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. We're heading into the NFL. We've got 4 games we're going to break down for you. We got Ralph in studio, so we've got to break down the Cleveland Browns, the L.A. Chargers. Did you catch that? I said the L.A. Chargers. I didn't say San Diego this week. You proud of me, Ralph?
Yeah. That's the reason to be proud of you.
Ralph, your Cleveland Browns, gutsy win last week. Little bit tainted, in my opinion, because they caught Baltimore coming off the Steeler game. Much bigger rivalry for Cleveland than it is for Baltimore, even though, this is the old Cleveland Browns coming back to Cleveland. Tell me your take on this game, and then I'll try to tell you why it's not going to be another win.
Well, I'm happy with the Browns' progress. They've gotten some players in there that want to be there, that, Jarvis Landry coming in, leads the NFL in receptions last year, wants to come to Cleveland. That's a positive. Baker Mayfield leading the team, that's a positive. So getting some free agents is a big deal for Cleveland. You don't think about it, but, New England can get any free agent they want if they can afford to pay them. But the Browns, a lot of those teams that have been bad for so long, can't get free agents to sign. With that being said, yes, the Browns are off a win, but as a realist, you play differently off a win than you do off a loss. You look at Baker Mayfield. The first game against the Jets, he came in at halftime, his hair on fire, had a great performance, running up and down the field, and they won. They go to Oakland in a game they could have won and had the lead, and he throws picks, gets sacked, makes a couple bad decisions. Again, that's how a team learns how to win multiple games in a row.
Also looked like a rookie for the first time.
And he did. And then the Baltimore game was a rival that you were behind, came back, couldn't score a touchdown, had to win in overtime. So here's the negatives for me for the Browns. Well, you've already played 3 overtime games. That's crazy for 5 games into the season. That means you played an extra game already. You haven't won back-to-back games since 2014. November 2nd and 6th is the last time you won back-to-back games. You're 4-8 ATS off a straight-up win. And the Chargers are one of the better teams in the NFL. Phillip Rivers with 11-2 ratio. And I'm a Chargers backer this week, where I think the Chargers are the right play. Your thoughts, Marco?
I'm on the Chargers as well, and you brought out the point about the back-to-back overtimes. I don't know. I can't remember that happening,
I don't know if the team's ever been in 3 overtimes in the first 5 weeks of the season.
And you look at what they've had so far. This is a team that they're ripe for a letdown. They open the season against the hated rivals, the Steelers. Then they play a gutsy game after that overtime game. They go down to the Superdome, play the Saints. They should have won that game. That was the game that cost the kicker his job, the 2 missed field goals, the 2 missed extra points, and they lose by 3 points. Then they turn around and had to play on a short week. They played on a Thursday night.
But a big game because it was a nationally televised home game.
Exactly. So another game, big game for them. And then they go, to the West Coast and play Oakland, a game that they got jobbed by the officials, in my opinion, go to overtime again, and then the rivalry. How do they get up again for the Chargers this week? The Chargers are a little bit of an enigma. They're 3-2. If you look at their 2 losses and you say, hey, this team, their losses came to the Rams and Kansas City. There's no shame in that. Those are 2 of the best.
They're 10-0, by the way.
Yeah.
Those two losses are the teams that are 10. The only 2 undefeated teams in the NFL.
So, hey, the Chargers are great. But then you look at the 3 wins, and then you say, Buffalo, San Francisco, Oakland, not, 3 of the dregs, of the NFL. So they're not as good as only losing to the 2 undefeated teams, but they're not as good as being undefeated against the rest of the league. They're somewhere in the middle. But I think because of the spot they're in, playing Cleveland, and let's face it, Baltimore, if you watch that game, they looked, and I know you watch every play of the Cleveland games, Baltimore looked flat as a pancake to me. I think that was a case. We talk about teams losing a game twice. I think Baltimore lost the game because of the win that they had last week. That beating up on Pittsburgh the way they did, that was so satisfying for Baltimore, and especially doing it on national TV. Cleveland got it. This is the week that Cleveland has the flat spot. The Chargers, believe it or not, the Chargers have the third best offense efficiency-wise at yards per play. I'm going to go with the Chargers here. They're not going to take the Browns lightly after the Browns just beat Baltimore.
Podcast listeners, you heard that. Marco and I agree on a play. Write it down. All right, Marco, let's go ahead and move to our Oakland/Las Vegas Raiders traveling across the pond to play Seattle. And you have a situation where Seattle played their guts out, could have beaten the Rams. It was a great game down to the finish. And Oakland looked as flat as could be against the Chargers. And now they're on the road for a second straight week. Tell us what you think about this London game.
Yeah, well, the fact that it is a London game throws the added wrinkle into the game. And, Ralph, I do Oakland radio, or actually in San Francisco, but cover the Raiders weekly. And normally I do it on Thursday night or Friday night. I did it last night because the host of the show is also sideline reporter for the Raiders. He was getting on a plane today and going to London, and just listening to him tell me what today.
That surprised me that they just left today. That's very interesting.
Seattle left yesterday.
Okay.
The Raiders were doing it different. They're doing it. They're in and they're out. So they left today, Thursday, because of the hours and the travel distance. They're actually going to be arriving on Friday when they hit London. So it was a unique situation, and I wish they probably would have left a day earlier. I like getting there and getting acclimated to everything, but this is the way they're doing it. But this is a play for me that it's strictly, I'm not going with the Oakland Raiders. I'm going against the Seattle Seahawks here. You said it in your opening. The Seahawks played their guts out last week. They lost their best defensive player the week before in Earl Thomas. How many times do we talk about the first week of an injury, a team plays their heart out because, they want to show the season's not over, blah, blah, blah. And it was against the Rams. Division rival, and in my opinion, the best team in the NFL. Complete team. It was a physical game. They sent two guys out of the games. Kupp and Cooks both out for the Rams with concussions. That's how hard of a hitting a game it was with Seattle and the Rams. Now they got to turn around, get on a plane, have that long flight, go play a team, the Raiders, that they could really give, they don't care about the Raiders. I think this is a good spot for the Raiders to catch a mediocre Seattle team that is a bad defense. Granted, they played their guts out last week. They gave up 30-some points. That's the average that the Rams score every week. So no shame in what they gave up. I give them credit for scoring 31 points last week. I didn't expect the Seattle offense to be able to do that, but I just don't see their defense being able to have the same intensity this week. I think the Raiders get the job done. I'm taking the Raiders, and this is, like I said, more of an anti-Seattle play because of the situation than actually taking the Raiders. But this is a spot the Raiders can get the job done.
Well, let's talk about those London games. And while this doesn't mean much because there's so many different scenarios, 10 of the last 15 games have gone over the total in London. And while I don't have a strong play on this, if I had to pick a situation, although 10 of 15 have gone over, I just say that for information, I actually lean with the under. You look at Seattle's offense, and they have not been productive. When you compare them to what the other foes have allowed, if you look at the season averages, they are last or second last against the opponent's averages. Putting up 373 against the Rams was great, but 231 against Arizona on the road, 276 against Chicago on the road, 306 against Denver on the road. And while yards are sometimes misleading, they have 3 games and they've only had 49 first downs when they're on the road. Now, the Raiders' defense isn't good, but in this situation, with those injuries that you said, with a Derek Carr who only put up 289 yards last week and 14 first downs, with the second road game for them, if I had to make a play on this game, it would be a lower scoring game on the under.
Throw one last thing in there, and you talk about scheduling. This is the 6th game of the season. This is going to be the 4th road game for the Seattle Seahawks. And this is a road game and a half, traveling across country. And one of the other things that Chris pointed out to me, Chris Townsend, about this that's unique, and it's both teams are in the same situation. But normally when you have the London games, they make sure the team is either at home the week before or on the East Coast. A lot of teams,
San Diego's playing in Cleveland, and the next week they are at the LA Chargers. I just called them San Diego. I just picked that. But the Chargers are playing in Cleveland, then they go to London next week.
They normally, yes. And so the Raiders, just unique situation all the way around. So we'll see what happens. Going to be interesting to watch the game over there, and maybe they should just leave both teams over there because it's going to be long seasons for both coaches and both defenses. The next one, Ralph, heading on down the line, you'll look at this one, you scratch your head. You got Jacksonville at Dallas. So many questions to ask you. The Dallas offense, Dak Prescott, have you ever in your time doing this, have you ever seen a player be Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year in his first year, and regress as bad as he has done? We've always seen the sophomore jinx maybe a little bit, but this is carried over now to year 3, and it's getting worse for Dak Prescott.
You mean a 5-4 ratio is not good?
No, it's not. They can't score any points. Not the 5-4, could be worse, obviously, but they're not scoring any points. They're not moving the offense, and you got one of the best running backs in football.
No Des Bryant, no Witten, and I think the most important thing that people don't realize how important an all-pro center is, which they lost before Game 1. He has an injury, an illness, a significant illness that we don't know if he's going to play football or not. Hopefully he does, but you have a 3 or 4 time consecutive all-pro center who is now gone. I mean, that's a huge gap there to fill, especially since it happened right before the season, and in the preseason they weren't able to work out those kinks. Now, I am on Jacksonville this game. I have a definite like on this game, and you look at what Jacksonville did and you say, well, yeah, they got crushed against Kansas City on the road, and they're playing a second straight road game, but they had 502 yards against Kansas City, which is normal. The problem is they turned the ball over. Bortles had 4 interceptions in the rain. That's not going to happen. I think this defense shuts down Dallas, and I like Jacksonville.
Yeah, this is my problem is last week, and I was on Jacksonville, as every sharp I know was on Jacksonville last week.
KC's only getting outgained by 54 yards a game, last in the league. Of course they're 5-0.
Yeah. This is a spot that the one thing that we didn't factor into the game was that we were going to get the 2016 version of Blake Bortles instead of the 2017 version of Blake Bortles. And if we see that again, I can't back Jacksonville on the road. And I think the problem is, for me, it's Leonard Fournette. They need his running, that power running, to balance the offense. You cannot win games, I'm sorry.
With T.J. Yeldon?
With Blake Bortles throwing the football 61 times.
Well, when your leading rusher, Yeldon, is averaging 4.2 yards per carry, and Bortles is second on your team with 132 yards, that is scary. Yeah, so that's my problem, and we're not going to see Fournette again this week. So I can't back Jacksonville. This is one of those ones that our buddy Mark Lawrence used to say, you go to the window and hold your nose. I'm going to go to the window and hold my nose, take Dallas, because this offense is stinky, and they're going against one of the best defenses in the NFL. You know what? Last year, everyone remembers this game. It was Thursday night. It was the season opener. It was the Patriots coming off a Super Bowl win. And what did KC do? Punch them right into the gut. Well, what do you know? A year later, now KC's the undefeated team going to face New England. I would say clearly no one's going to question the best 2 teams in the AFC right now. What do you make of it?
Well, what I make of it is if I turn around, we don't have a camera in here, but if I turn around, you would see 2 tire marks over my back because the Kansas City Chiefs ran me over 2 weeks in a row. I was on Denver on the Monday night game, and I was on Jacksonville last week. I thought they were great spots. Will the third time be the charm? I got to go against them again, and it's because of the situation. You give Bill Belichick 3 extra days to prepare. He has always been a wizard over his coaching career when he has faced a young quarterback. Now, this is a young quarterback that's doing things like nobody else has ever done coming into the league in Pat Mahomes, but we saw last week Mahomes didn't beat Jacksonville with his arm. It was his mobility that kept plays alive and his scrambling ability, and then, of course, all those Jacksonville turnovers. He had his first game that he looked like a human quarterback instead of this superhero that he's been the first 4 weeks of the season. I'm going to go with New England here, and I'm going to give you a couple stats. New England, if you blindly bet the Patriots the last 3 years at home as a favorite, you would be 17-6, or excuse me, just at home. They're always a favorite. 17-6 against the spread. But when they've really shined, in 17-6, Ralph, that's a nice profit if you just did that. But if you want to take a subset of that, when they're a 7-point or less home favorite, so think about that. If you give a team 3.5 points for home field advantage, that means they're playing a team that's pretty good if the line's 7 or less, because 3.5 of that is in the home field advantage. That means they're supposed to struggle against the better teams. Well, they play their best against the best, New England. They're 9-1 against the spread the last 3 seasons, laying 7 or less at home. And I got to go with them here. This is a spot where I just don't see Mahomes 3 weeks in a row after playing Denver, playing in that rainstorm last week against a very tough defense, a physical game. Even though Jacksonville was down, they were hitting in that game and talking smack like they were winning the game. I just don't think they can do it for 3 weeks in a row. I'm taking Belichick and Brady over Mahomes.
Marco, oh my God, we agreed twice in this podcast on the NFL. So, I echo your sentiments. Kansas City, minus 59 yards per game, last in the NFL. Kansas City, minus 4 first downs per game. Horrible. You look at Brady and Belichick. They've been home for 3 straight games. If you blindly bet every NFL team home for a third straight game, you're 39, 24-1, 62% since 2014. So blindly in that role, being comfortable at home, not traveling, 62%. Add in that situation, and you look at Kansas City. I mean, we know they're not getting respect. You talked about that with Colorado and the bookmakers and the lines. Well, you have a 5-0 team who's a dog in week 6. In the last 30 years, it's only happened 6 times. Those teams are 3-3 ATS, so no shattering thing, but it just shows you how rare it is to be 5-0 and be a dog in week 6. I love the Patriots.
All right, great stuff, guys. What's that mean? We only got one thing left. That's Best Bets. That's up next here on the WagerTalk Podcast. Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. It is the home stretch. That means it's time for Best Bets. Last week, Best Bets from Ralph and I, not so good. Mine was one of those gut-wrenching bad beats, Miami Dolphins. You get one of those every year, and they just absolutely suck, Ralph.
Oh, mine was a bad beat as well. I had Wyoming, and Hawaii's quarterback had the flu, and Wyoming had the lead with a minute to go, and the quarterback on 3rd and long throws a 38-yard touchdown pass with just over a minute to go. But a loss is a loss for our listeners.
It is.
Absolutely.
It is. So we got work to do this week, and I'll start with you, Ralph. You've got a college football play, but full disclosure, you were gracious enough. We never talked before we come into the studio, and we came into the studio with the same best bet this week. And I know that's scary because me and you, we make a joke about it all the time that we don't, agree, but, we agree more than you want to admit it.
Let's just get to it. My best bet is on Duke I say that because that's Marco's best bet, and now the guy's face is frantic. Yeah. All right, I switched my best bet. I'll let you know in a minute what Marco's is, but I like A&M this week at South Carolina. You look at the scores, and we're getting two misleading scores on both ends. A&M really dominated Kentucky. People look at that final and say, oh, it went to overtime and they got a touchdown to cover the spread, but they held Kentucky to 8 first downs, and Kentucky, after the first drive of the game, did not cross midfield. South Carolina, on the flip side, had a absolutely torrential downpour with lightning delays. And anytime there's a lightning delay, it's very obvious that the home team has an edge. They're in familiar settings. Their locker rooms are much more comfortable than the visitors' locker rooms. They have all these things they could do to fill their time. And what happened after the rain delay or the lightning delay? Missouri throws a pick 6 and South Carolina wins that game. I'm high on the Aggies team with Jimbo Fisher. They get the win this week.
All right. My game, which was also Ralph's game, so you get a double best bet here, guys. I'm looking at Duke, and they're playing Georgia Tech. And, guys, this is one where you just look at this game. You look at Georgia Tech, and you look at the numbers they put up the last 2 weeks. They scored 60-plus points 2 weeks in a row. But, guys, there's a couple reasons for that. 2 weeks ago, they played Bowling Green. And Ralph's a guy from the MAC, and I'm sure this is part of it. You know, Bowling Green is absolutely pathetic this year.
I'm not sure if there's a worse defense there may be a worse defense in the NCAA. I'm not quite sure. But, they're and again, when you have a MAC team that's just getting a paycheck game to face the option, they're not going to spend time in the summer, and they're not going to spend very much time during the week because they're more concerned about their MAC schedule, getting some MAC wins against opponents they can beat.
Absolutely. And then last week, they played a Louisville team, okay? They steamrolled Louisville 66-31. They put up 66 points against a Louisville team. You say, hey, okay, that's not Bowling Green. This offense is for real. No. Louisville, even though they're in the ACC, this was the first time that they had faced the option of Georgia Tech. Not only was it the first time that they faced the option of Georgia Tech, they had to do it on a short week. They played on a Thursday night game. You only have a few days to prepare for the option, something that you don't see. That is an absolutely huge, huge disadvantage for the Louisville Cardinal, and they got rolled. So now you're looking at a Georgia Tech team, and I'm going to throw it out there. Fat and sassy. You put up 60 points 2 weeks in a row. You're coming in here. You look at this one now. If you're a bettor, you're going to see back-to-back 60-plus points. They're only laying a field goal. Oh, wait, excuse me. They're not laying a field goal anymore. A lot of the places have moved this down to 2.5 as they're getting Duke money. There's still threes out there, but it looks like a gift, Ralph, to take Georgia Tech minus the field goal. They just got to win the game. Yeah, go ahead and bet those games that look like a gift because those gifts always blow up in your face. Duke has faced this team. They know how to handle the option. They've already played an option team this year in Army. That's practice for them, and they held Army to 14 points in that game. They see Georgia Tech every year in the ACC. What'd they do last year? They only beat them 43-20. What did they do the year before? Well, they lost, but they were getting 6.5. They lost 38-35. They handled themselves in that game, stayed with them. And I think you're going to see the same thing here. Only they're going to actually win this game. I like this Duke team this year. I like how they've progressed. I'll take them in stat on Duke, courtesy of Ralph. You want to jump in with that 8-1 stat you said?
Well, you know, they played Army and Georgia Tech last year. They played Army this year, and you go back to their history. They're now 8-1 against the option. And, again, when you're playing multiple teams in that season, you're practicing in the spring, you're practicing in August, you're practicing during your bye week, which is huge, having that bye week to prep for the option. So a great situational play on the Blue Devils.
And that's why we both ended up coming in here. All those games on the college football schedule, we didn't talk and we landed on the same game, so that tells you how much we like this game. Go with Duke. We'll give Ralph gets credit having the play, too. If
I
it
get
loses,
credit if it wins. If it loses, it's all Marco's fault. So.
Yeah, you know where I was going. You jumped the gun and beat me to it. All right, guys. Hey, I hope you enjoyed tonight's show. I want to thank all of our guests tonight. William Bernanke from CG. The information that he brings us when he comes on is second to none. Be sure to check out that Sunday morning show. We're getting a lot of great response with that show, with Kelly going, talking to him on Sunday mornings.
And remember, we talked about the buys, and Marco asked the question about the teasers with the buys. Make sure you follow at CalSportsLV. I will tweet out all those records. Again, I'll retweet the records for all the buy situations, and I'll include the 6 and 10-point teasers for those roles.
Ralph, real quick for our listeners before we sign off, do you have anything you want to tell the listeners about you got going this weekend?
Well, I'm off my worst college football week in 2 seasons. And, yes, that happens, and it's unfortunate. But, like we always talk about the Patriots off a loss, good handicappers tend to rebound, and I'm sure I will this week. And college basketball is just 3 weeks away. November 5th, there's over 120
November
games.
6th, you said.
November 6th.
That's my birthday. That's why I remember.
There's 100 and plus games that day. There are 55 new head coaches. If you go to WagerTalk.com, go to the Cal Sports page, you'll get a complete guide of every new head coach, and in just one easy line, you're going to know exactly what that head coach did, be it a previous head coach, be it an assistant that got promoted, or coming from another team. One bizarre example real quick, the main head coach this year for the Black Bears, he was the women's head coach the last 6 years, and he was a women's assistant coach the last 16 years. So the last 22 years, he was a coach in women's basketball. He is now the men's basketball head coach. We'll see what happens.
Good stuff. This week for me, I'm going to have baseball. The season that we had in baseball, actually the last 2 seasons, I'm going to have a package up later tonight or early tomorrow morning. We're going to have a play on both series, and one of my series plays is going to be a 5% play. I absolutely love one of the series, but you're going to get 2 for the price of 1. You're going to pay for the 5% and basically get the other one free. And, of course, if you noticed, we didn't do the Cincinnati-Pittsburgh game this week. Ralph, do you have any idea why we didn't do that game?
Well, let's see. Marco, I lost a crab leg dinner to him on one of those games, but Mr. Marco is now 5-0, honor against the Steelers each of the first 5 weeks, and this week will be a play as well, like your 5% winner was last week?
Yeah, 5% last week was on the Steelers over Atlanta. That was my NFL game of the month. It was my biggest play of the season involving the Steelers, and we've done it all. We've gone over, we've gone under, we've gone with, we've gone against. I'm not a homer. Find out what the play is. I'll have that up probably Saturday night. I'm going to let this line just settle in where we're going to see where it's going to be at before we release it, and you can get that as well. So, guys, thanks again. Big shout-out to Mark Seidel behind the controls. Dave Cokin will be back with us next week. We gave Dave the week off, feeling a little under the weather. And, of course, a shout-out to Johnny Detroit. He takes care of getting us out on all of the social media channels, gets us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. And, of course, Mark Seidel running that board, making sure we sound good. And you guys, the listeners, hey, there's no show if you guys don't tune in each week and listen to the show. We love the comments and responses that you guys provide. I'm Marco D'Angelo. Till next week, let's cash some tickets.